Sonic the Hedgehog Relaunch, Chapter 5, Mistaken Identity. The human girl was in front of him. She was looking at him. He could recognize her anywhere. Everything immediately faded. Shadow was in some kind of capsule, like the one he was in before. He was chained in it like before as well. Soon was standing in front of him.
How dare you do this?
Shadow snapped.
You want to get the Master Emerald, correct?
Soon asked.
Don't try to change the subject.
He almost shouted.
You didn't do as I asked last time, and look at what happened.
Stone seemed to be completely ignoring him.
I told you, I don't take orders from anyone.
He was nearly shouting.
I have a plan to get the Master Emerald and the smaller emeralds. All you have to do is listen to me.
Stone was not convincing him in the slightest.
You're referring to the Chaos Emeralds, and I will not listen to you. I do what I want. The only human that I listen to is the Professor. You aren't him, so back off or be killed.
He shouted.
Did you forget that you are in a capsule right now?
Stone asked. He growled in response.
You are going to listen to me, whether you like it or not.
Stone pulled out a device and pressed a button on it. Shadow felt himself losing control of his own mind and body. He struggled in the chains.
No, stop. Not again.
He shouted before it all went black. At the Wachowski house, Tom and Maddie were getting ready to leave for a hotel. It seemed a little odd that they were going to stay in a hotel in their own town, but considering the damage from earlier, it made more sense. Sonic had run off and had returned, while Tails and Knuckles were supposed to be getting ready as well. They were about to check on them to make sure they were doing what was asked, when Tails shouted for them from the living room.
You've got to see this right now!
Tails sounded startled, shocked, and surprised all at the same time. Tom and Maddie ran into the living room to see what was so important that Tails felt like he had to shout like that. They got their answer immediately. The TV was currently turned on. It was on the news channel. The headline was startling. It read, Alien Hedgehog, Sonic Wachowski, robbed a bank a few hours ago. Everyone in the room was speechless. That didn't sound like Sonic to them. Footage was played from the security cameras. A hedgehog around Sonic's size entered the room. There was the green Choose Emerald in a protective case in the middle of it. The details of the hedgehog were hard to see. The hedgehog suddenly fired blue electricity at the case, destroying it. The alarm sounded. The hedgehog walked up to the emerald and grabbed it. The hedgehog turned toward the camera. It almost looked like the hedgehog's eyes were blue. But the hedgehog immediately spun at the camera, ending the footage. The reporter went on to say more things about the robbery, but no one in the Wachowskis' living room was paying attention.
Sonic couldn't have done that right!
Tails asked, as he slowly moved closer to Maddie.
I don't think so, Tails.
Maddie reassured. Tom wasn't sure what to think. Sonic wouldn't do something like that, right?
That was Sonic. There's no denying it.
Knuckles seemed convinced by the recording alone.
Well, no, Sonic would never do something like that. Comes back, I'll talk to him. I'm sure it's some misunderstanding.
Tom finally stated, even though he believed that Sonic would never steal anything like that, there was still a doubt in Tom's mind that Sonic actually had been the one to steal the Choose Emerald. How did the emerald get in a bank to begin with anyway? Sonic was currently running back to the town. At least he wasn't glowing anymore. He stopped in shock when he saw gun soldiers. He ran closer to them. They seemed to be looking for something.
There he is.
One of them shouted. Sonic looked around to see what that human was referring to. He didn't see anything but a net about to land on him. He quickly ran out of the way. The gun soldiers were trying to capture him again apparently. He easily dodged their nets and bullets.
You can catch me.
He taunted them. He had only stopped for a single second to taunt them, and that single second was enough time for one of the gun soldiers to grab him and put his hands in those chains.
We got you now.
Sonic turned around to see Commander Walters behind him. He was about to run, but he was picked up.
Hey, why are you doing this again?
Sonic shouted.
You know what you did?
The commander replied.
I didn't do anything. I'm telling you the truth.
He shouted again. Sonic soon found himself in a helicopter, heading for who knows where. It was a good thing for Sonic that they had knocked him out. Yet, he was able to use Chess control to break out of the chains and knock out the soldiers. He broke the door off of the helicopter and jumped onto the wing.
What do you think you're doing?
The commander shouted at him. The commander was the only human on that helicopter still conscious except for the pilot.
I'm not about to let you guys capture me again. It's been fun, but I gotta go fast.
He replied, before breaking off a piece of the wing and jumping off of the helicopter. As he was falling, he could hear the commander shout orders to capture him again, or something like that. He landed on the ground, using the piece of the wing like a board. He was glad that he landed on a slopped street. He boarded down that street until it wasn't slopping anymore. Once the surface was flat, he jumped off of the board and started to run. In the helicopter, Commander Walters tried his best to keep his eye on Sonic, but he eventually lost sight of the blue blur. There was also that feeling that Sonic might not have been the Hedgehog who stole the green emerald. Could it have been the project from 50 years ago? The files were found recently. If that actually was the case, then that must have meant that the creature would surely cause mass destruction very soon. Back at the Wachowski house, everyone had finally recovered from the shock of the news report. A certain blue hedgehog entered through the attic and ran into the living room, making the surprise come back.
You guys won't believe what just happened. I think those gun guys are after me again. I was put in one of those flying machines, and then I jumped out of it and boarded down the street. It was so awesome.
Sonic almost shouted in excitement. Tom, Maddie, Tails, and Knuckles responded with silence.
What's wrong?
Sonic asked. Tom took a deep breath and let it out. He didn't want to sound really angry or anything.
Sonic just saw a news report that said you were on the bank and stole a case of emerald. Did you do that?
He asked. Sonic's excitement seemed to vanish instantly.
No, Gun said I did something, but I didn't do anything, honest.
Sonic's ears were drooping slightly and he was hanging his head.
If it wasn't you, then who did it? The moving image showed a hedgehog flying blue electricity. Who else could have done that?
Knuckles asked.
I can fire electricity.
Sonic responded.
You can't.
Knuckles sounded shocked, but he wasn't shouting at least.
I can't? It must have been. Shitto.
Sonic's expression changed to an angry, or it might have been determined, one.
The hedgehog who attacked you before.
Maddie asked. Sonic nodded.
He must have stolen the Chaz emerald. I need to find him soon.
Sonic sounded firm.
Not tonight, though.
Maddie stated, stern enough for Sonic to get the picture.
I was planning on searching for him tomorrow anyway.
Sonic replied. Tails approached Knuckles.
Could you hold me for a second?
He whispered.
Why are you whispering?
Knuckles asked.
Just follow me.
He responded, as he grabbed Knuckles' arm and attempted to drag him toward the stairs. If Knuckles had gone along with it, then Tails wouldn't have been able to pull him. He led Knuckles up the stairs and into the attic, and Knuckles asked. He let go of Knuckles' arm.
I just want to look around this room for a few minutes. I have the feeling there's something here, something that we need to see.
He replied.
Okay, this should not take long.
Knuckles stated.
Don't mess up anything, though.
He warned Knuckles, just in case. After a few minutes, Knuckles found something.
I have located a tiny quill.
Knuckles informed.
Is it one of Sonic's quills?
He asked.
No, this one is black.
Knuckles responded.
Black.
He walked over to Knuckles. The Echidna held up the small black quill in his right hand. Tails pulled out his handheld and began running scans on the quill.
Does it belong to Shadow?
Knuckles asked.
Yeah, it does, but it was dropped by a much older hedgehog.
He replied.
Dropped when Shadow was younger.
Knuckles repeated.
That's not the only thing my device can detect. It has found something else. Something about Shadow's relatives.
He gasped at what his device said.
What is it?
Knuckles asked, a little shocked as well.
Knuckles, you're never gonna believe this.